Hello, Universe's bestie here, and my bestie said that I could take another week off and do another rerun episode, so I'm doing that, friends. This is the Carl Sagan bio episode. I did it with Corinne over 2 years ago, and when I was going back through my episodes trying to figure out which one to share with you again, this one stood out to me. My dad always really admired Carl Sagan. I remember watching Contact with him when I was growing up, and after I started studying astro things, he would say things like, "Oh, your buddy Carl Sagan did this," or, "Your old friend Carl Sagan used to say that," even though I absolutely never met Carl Sagan, and neither did he, but it feels like a very nice memory for me to relive and to share with you, to keep him around in some way. So enjoy, please, this episode about Carl Sagan, the person who gave Pale Blue Pod its name. Actually, that was Corinne, but she was inspired by Carl Sagan and his pale blue dot photo. We talk about it in the episode, so give it a listen. And next week I will be back with a new episode all about a recent trip I took to a NASA center. So stay tuned for that. And here's all about Carl Sagan. Welcome to Pale Blue Pod, the astronomy podcast for people who are overwhelmed by the universe but want to be its friend.
It's true, and I'm a friend of the universe. I was just having dinner with them the other night. I am Corinne Caputo, a writer, comedian, and friend to all.
To all?
To everyone I've ever met.
Wow, what a claim.
You know what?
Exhausting. I believe it. You're so nice, and you are so likable.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah,
I don't know about the nice thing, but you are very likable. I will say that.
I do think I'm very nice. I definitely, probably too much so. Even when I was teaching at the Space Center, I was always, afraid to be that answer's wrong. I didn't have that, which you, need if you're a teacher. So, in that way, way too nice.
Mm-hmm. I get that. Who am I? I am Dr. Moiya McTier. I'm an astrophysicist and a folklorist and a friend to the universe.
Yes.
And I know that I am friend to the universe because one of the things the universe has taught me is that I am often too nice. So one of my resolutions actually for 2023 was to be more selfish, because
I think that's great.
The universe was like, Moiya, you're too much of a people pleaser. You got to stop that. And I was like, you know what, friend? You're right.
It's really healthy to make some of those calls. It's so easy to say that to someone else, though. I know when actually in practice, it's so challenging.
Mm-hmm. It is. But today we're going to be talking about someone who is also kind of universally, I'm not going to say that, who is earth-widely beloved. Many people considered him to be extremely nice, to be a very nice scientist, to be an amazing science communicator. He is the origin of this podcast's name. Mm-hmm. Today, we're talking about Carl Sagan.
Yay!
Yay! I never met him. He died the year after I was born. But we are talking about him and his work today from a horse barn.
Yes, we are in a horse barn.
Yes, we are. So the smell of horses and hay, and honestly, the manure. I love the smell of horse poop. It's so comforting.
God. That is so. I love that it's comforting to you because I think it's a scent that can easily get turn people away.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely the case for a lot of people. But to me, it takes me right back to some of my favorite memories from Girl Scout camp. I grew up spending all of my summers at Girl Scout camp, and there was a barn with a lot of horses, and I felt cool because I was not a barn staffer, but I was friends with all the barn staffers.
Sure.
So this is taking me right back to that. And I just love being surrounded by the bustle of people cleaning tack and scooping hay, and the horses, they're whinnying. It's so cute. And I really hope we get to ride some horses when we're done recording.
Yeah, you're gonna have to walk me through that, because I've ridden a horse one time and I found it really terrifying.
Really?
Yeah, they gave me way too big a horse.
Oh, that'll do it.
It was the largest horse in the whole barn, and I was like, you can't do this to me. So I was so high off the ground, and I was just like, I was just nervous.
How old were you?
27. Like, this was recent.
I fully pictured
a child?
you as a little
No,
girl.
I was fully grown.
Okay. All right. So maybe you don't ride the horses.
Maybe I'll walk
we'll
next
see.
to the horse, and I'll...
You can at least like feed and brush some of the horses.
Let me just get to know it first. It needs to be a slower on-ramp to now you're on top of the biggest horse we have.
Yeah, and maybe we won't put you on the biggest horse. I will happily, I'm saying this to the barn staffers, I will happily take the biggest horse you have. I love being tall. Please find me that horse over there. I want that one.
I love being tall. That's so funny.
I do. I never get to be as tall as I want to be in life.
Moiya, I remember you as a tall person. Or I think of you as a tall person, as we are in person right now.
You know what, Corinne? I really appreciate you saying that. A lot of people tell me that they think of me as a tall person. They say I have tall person energy.
Yes.
I am 5'5" on a good day with my hair.
Interesting. I would have guessed we were the same height.
How tall are you?
I'm like 5'7".
Oh, we're sitting, so we can't see this.
You can't see. You'll see it when I get on the horse.
Yes.
We can even out on the horse.
Well, you'll see me when I get on the horse. I'm going to be 9 feet tall. Gonna be so tall. But before we both achieve our dream heights, today we're talking about Dr. Carl Sagan. He is a celebrated astronomer, writer, speaker, communicator. He did a lot in a life that was surprisingly short.
Yes, I was
Both
surprised.
of us were surprised.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But let's talk about it.
Let's talk about his early life.
Yeah.
All right, so I did a bit of digging here. It's not really digging when information is so easily accessible.
That's the nice thing about doing an episode about a very famous person.
Exactly. So Carl Sagan was born November 9th, 1934 in Bensonhurst in Brooklyn.
Nice.
Brooklyn, New York. His parents, Samuel Sagan, is an immigrant from then Russia, but today's Ukraine.
Topical.
Topical man. And Rachel Molly Gruber, who is from New York. That's his mother.
Can I just say, Samuel Sagan?
Yeah.
Great name.
I think that's such a good name.
That should be in a comic book somewhere.
I love it, Samuel Sagan. It is Carl Sagan. Flows well, but there's something like impressive about Samuel Sagan.
Agreed.
Key Davidson is Carl Sagan's biographer, so some of this information is like quotes from that. But Key described Sagan's relationship with Sagan's parents as a kind of like, quote, inner war, since Sagan's mother and father were so opposite. And I tried to like get to the bottom of like what his dad was like, but I know his mom, Sagan traced his, quote, analytical urges to his mother, she grew up extremely poor in New York City in the 1920s. She had a lot of intellectual ambition, but those 20s. Ambitions, yeah.
Did she have him as a teen?
That's a great question. He was born in 1934, but she was growing up in the 1920s, so...
Okay, all right.
She was born 1906.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
Sorry to derail. I just
no worries at all.
Confused.
So she had intellectual ambitions, but those were obviously stalled by the time period, by being a woman, by being, poor, by being Jewish. So she didn't quite live out these fantasies or that she wanted. And Davidson, the biographer, suggests that this is why she worshipped Carl, who was her only son, and he could like fulfill these unlived dreams of hers. which is very sweet. I think it's a lot of pressure to put on your kid. Probably not parenting advice I would give, but certainly don't live through your children. Just let them be who they are. But there's a quote from Carl Sagan where he says, "My parents were not scientists. They knew almost nothing about science. But in introducing me simultaneously to skepticism and to wonder, they taught me the two uneasily cohabiting modes of thought that are central to the scientific method."
Ooh,
I feel like he was such a good writer. Like that he's a great science communicator. Obviously, he's like one of the most famous ones. His speech is like so iconic, that like the pale blue dot talk, but he's just really he seems really good at getting to the bottom of information and like giving it back in a way that is understandable.
Yeah. Delivering it in a message that will punch right to your heart.
Yes, exactly.
Early in my science communication days, I did try really hard to emulate Sagan's style.
Yeah.
Eventually, I realized that that's just not who I am.
Yeah.
But it's so good.
I know exactly what you mean. There's like an emotional element to the information he's communicating that, you know, I think every great writer wants to do that gut punch too. So totally. So when Sagan was 5, he took his first trips to the public library alone. And I was like, that's so young. But then I'm like, okay, this is Bensonhurst, New York. Like, the library probably wasn't that far, and also, like, so normal to just be walking down the street. So he wanted to learn what the stars were, since supposedly none of his friends or their parents could give him a clear answer. Isn't that so cute?
It really is.
He says, quote, "I went to the librarian and asked for a book about stars, and the answer was stunning. It was that the sun was a star, but really close, and the stars were suns, but so far away that they were just little points of light. The scale of the universe suddenly opened up to me. It was a kind of religious experience. There was magnificence to it, a grandeur, a scale which has never left me." Sweetie.
Oh, yes. Such a sweetie.
Okay, so fast forward to high school. He's not 5 years old anymore. He's a teen. His family moves to New Jersey, this town called Rahway, which I hadn't heard of before. So it's 1948. They moved there for his dad's work. And Sagan was a straight-A student, but was bored in all of his classes, which is, like, such a common thing for...
Relate.
Yeah, especially, like, these large public schools, which I totally understand, but, like, it's so hard to get that, like, precise ratio of teacher to student, and, like, everyone gets their specialized plan, and that would be ideal, but so it goes. Sagan was bored. His teachers did realize this, and they tried to encourage his parents to send him to a private school, but his parents could not afford this, so he was kind of stuck. Sagan became the president of the school's chemistry club, so I guess he's figuring out a way to get by.
Nice.
And he set up his own lab at home. He made models of molecules, did a lot of like hands-on visual representations of what was interesting to him, which I feel like probably paved the way for a lot of his communication stuff, of just like breaking it down to these smaller parts for himself even.
Ooh. Yeah, that's good insight.
Yeah. Wikipedia says that Sagan's junior year of high school, he discovered that astronomers get paid for doing what he loves to do. Which is so funny to me to not realize that until you're, like, that's the year you turn, like, 16. Like, dude, you have to...
I didn't know that was a thing until college.
Yeah, I actually shouldn't say that, because I remember the moment that I realized people write television shows, and I was like, I gotta do that. Like... Actually, my first reaction was, I wish I could do that. Like, I'm not that good. And then I was like, that's psycho of me to be so mean right up. Let me try first.
Wow. I love that correction you made.
Yeah, it was really,
good for you.
I remember I went to like a stand-up show, and they were like, I was like hanging out with like this group of like all of these white guys, and they were like, yeah, we want to do stand-up comedy, we want to write for TV. And I was like, oh, I wish I could do that. And looking back, I'm like, that was so weird that I was like, I'm the one in this group who can't do this.
Right.
Anyway, Sagan, back to high school. So he says when he discovers that astronomers get paid, that was a splendid day when I began to suspect that if I tried hard, I could do astronomy full-time, not just part-time. And I feel like that's the dream for so many, like, creatives as well, where you're just desperate to be, like, turning this art, like, into something profitable, sure, because, like, you need money to live, but just, like, just turning it into a thing where you don't have to be doing 7 other jobs. You can just kind of dedicate yourself to this one passion, which I loved.
And he did it.
He did it. So before the end of high school, he entered an essay contest in which he explored the idea. This isn't like super necessary, but I thought it was interesting. He explored the idea that human contact with advanced life forms from other planets might be as disastrous for people on Earth as Native Americans' first contact with Europeans. And I was like, yeah, that's, of course, that, you know, that could easily be true. The subject was considered controversial, but his rhetorical skills won over the judges and they awarded him first prize. So he was always a great speaker.
I would love to know exactly what part of that was controversial. Was it the idea of aliens existing at all?
Yes.
Was it that our contact with that wouldn't go well? Or was it that he was bringing up the fact that white people did not treat Native Americans well?
My gut says that they didn't want to acknowledge the deep negative impacts of colonialism.
Yeah.
But maybe it was because aliens were not real.
Maybe.
But I doubt it.
Just speculating. Yeah, there are a lot of things that they could have taken issue with.
Yeah, especially because this is like the 50s now. Like, yeah. Okay, so now we're in college. Sagan attended the University of Chicago, which, despite him being a straight A student, was one of the few colleges that admitted him. Moiya, do you know why that might be?
I think was he young?
Yes, it's because he was only 16.
16, yeah.
So only Chicago was like, sure, come on in.
So that means his high school, they let him like finish early.
Yes.
Okay, that's
so
good.
Instead of going to private school, they were like, maybe you should just get out of here. We could speed this up.
I like that they did that for him. When I was getting bored in my public school classes, they did not let me skip a grade for a very long time.
That stinks.
Yeah.
My husband was and is extremely good at math and got to take some, like he got to walk over to the nearby high school when he was in middle school and take some math classes, which really helped him. But I'm sure that not every middle schooler is like, also towns are not always set up in a way where it's like, great, okay, so now you're going to leave the classroom and walk around the corner. Okay, so it's back to Sagan. 16, so young. Socially, I have no idea what that was like for him, but he seemed to do really well academically. As an honors program undergrad, he worked in the lab of geneticist H.J. Mueller. And Sagan wrote a thesis on the origins of life with physical chemist Harold Urey. Sagan also joined the Ryerson Astronomical Society. And in 1954, he was awarded a bachelor's degree, something he apparently proclaimed was nothing, quote unquote.
wait. The bachelor's degree was nothing?
The
or
BA.
that it was in nothing?
He said, like, it was I think he referred to, like, the workload is what I think he was saying. Like, earning this was nothing. Like, but, and then a year later, he got his BS in physics. So I think it was the first one was like, that was easy. And now, let me get the sciences one.
Oh, maybe it's something where you get it along the way. Because in my PhD program, I got 2 master's degrees along the way.
Yeah.
And I don't feel excited about those.
Yeah, especially when there's this like large goal in the end. But he did go on to graduate work still at University of Chicago and earned a master's in physics in 1956. So he did all this within 2 years. Like 54, 55, 56, he got a degree. And then 1960, he got his PhD.
Yay!
His PhD thesis was entitled Physical Studies of the Planets. And I guess this is still in tandem with the PhD. I just thought it was really interesting. In 1958, Sagan and Gerard Kuiper. Oh, like the Kuiper Belt.
Like the Kuiper Belt, yes.
Yeah. Kuiper. Okay, Kuiper's Sagan's dissertation director, and he's a planetary scientist as well. Together, they worked on the classified military project A119 and the then-secret Air Force plan to detonate a nuclear warhead on the moon. The drama.
Yeah, the drama. That's definitely one of the more dramatic parts of NASA's history.
But it means Sagan had a top-secret clearance at the U.S. Air Force and a secret clearance with NASA while working on his doctoral dissertation. And Sagan revealed U.S. government classified titles of 2 Project A119 papers when he applied for the University of California Berkeley Scholarship in 1959, essentially leaking government secrets for this application. The leak was not publicly revealed until 1999 when it was published in the journal Nature. A follow-up letter to the journal by project leader Leonard Reifel confirmed Sagan's security leak. Isn't that crazy?
God. He had the clearance. He leaked it. It wasn't revealed that he leaked it until after he died. Oh my God, what a story.
The drama, really. So this is where I leave it, taking us to post-PhD and hopefully painting a picture of a smart guy who pursued education and only leaked country secrets twice.
Only twice.
Small thing.
It's the third time that's the problem.
It's the third time when it's a pattern. It takes 3 to be a pattern.
It's the U.S. government really likes the 3 strikes and you're out.
Exactly. Rule. It's an American classic, really.
That's where it started. Baseball stole it from the classified.
Baseball stole Sagan's work. Yeah. I'll say it.
You heard it here first, folks. Also, the fact that he did all of that top secret stuff before he was 30. He's like 25.
Yeah.
Working for the Air Force.
Oh, you know what I'm putting together now?
What?
He leaked the secrets. He's a talker. He's a communicator. You can't expect him to keep it a secret.
So later on, we're going to be talking about our favorite Carl Sagan quotes, and one of the quotes I chose is about this. So yeah, he's at least consistent, and I respect that about him.
I respect that from day one.
Mm-hmm. So I want to pick up at the end of grad school and talk about Sagan's research. So like you said, his dissertation was the physical studies of planets and their satellites, mostly the Moon and Venus, a little bit of Mars. His dissertation was advised by Gerard Kuiper, like you said, who did not discover the Kuiper belt. That wasn't discovered until much later, or like a few decades later in the 90s, but it was named after him because he was a planetary scientist. He was also advised by physicist George Gamow, who did some work in looking at the decay of particles. So he was instrumental in a lot of the nuclear research that was happening at the time. And also chemist Melvin Calvin, which is a great name. And so I really like that you can see in Sagan's history that he is very interdisciplinary. He's not just a planetary scientist. He also did genetics research. He looked at the origin of life and the evolution of intelligence on our planet. He knew a lot more chemistry than I do. He did chemistry experiments. So yeah, he was an interdisciplinary researcher, and you can definitely see that in the rest of his career. So after graduating from University of Chicago, he worked as a Miller Research Fellow at UC Berkeley. And now that you've said this, I'm thinking that he got this essentially postdoctoral fellowship by leaking U.S. government secrets, which is badass.
That is bad. You know, how many people that must be such a hard leak to control, because you're like, okay, who saw your application? Who talked to who? It's hilarious.
It's hilarious. Okay, yeah, so he gets this postdoctoral fellowship by breaking the law. And while he was at UC Berkeley, he was studying Venus's atmosphere. So this is in the 60s, the early 60s. We didn't know yet a lot about Venus. We hadn't sent telescopes to Venus and to many of the other planets in our solar system. But Carl Sagan was one of the first to study the surface temperature of Venus. And using radio waves, he determined that the surface of Venus was not warm and wet like a lot of people thought. A lot of people assumed that it would be kind of a tropical climate and that life might be possible on Venus. And Sagan was one of the first to find that no. The surface of Venus is like 900 degrees Fahrenheit. It is not warm and wet. It is dry and so hot that lead could melt on the surface of Venus. Whoa. It's extremely hot. So he was one of the first people to find that. Throughout the rest of his career, he also did a lot of work on those spacecraft missions, like the Mariner flybys of both Venus and Mars, the Viking orbiters and landers that were sent to Mars, and the Pioneer and Voyager missions that were sent to the outer system to explore those planets. He consulted on those missions. He was the principal investigator on some of those spacecraft missions. So he at the beginning of his career was focused on planets, and that was a through line for the rest of it as well. So he did that postdoc for 2 years at UC Berkeley. And then from 1963 to 1968, he was an assistant professor at Harvard. Shout out to Harvard. A very unenthusiastic shout out to Harvard. Yeah. At the end of his assistant professorship there, he applied for tenure, to be a tenured professor at Harvard. His tenure application was denied.
Because no secrets.
Because of the secrets.
They were like, well...
Actually, kind of. Maybe it is Sagan's mouth and his compulsion to communicate that keeps getting him in trouble, because one of the reasons he thought his tenure application was denied was that he spent too much time doing science communication. And too much, not enough time on his own research. So he left Harvard in 1968 and went to Cornell, where he was a faculty member from Cornell had been like courting him for years, wanting him to come to their astronomy department. He finally did in 1968, and there, in a smaller astronomy department, he was really able to thrive and boom in his science communication work, while still doing a lot of research. So he was at Cornell from 1968 pretty much until he died in 1996. Throughout his career, he studied the atmosphere of Venus. He was one of the first to believe and say that Titan, one of the moons of Saturn, had liquid on its surface. It's not liquid water. They have a lot of methane lakes, but he was still one of the first to say liquid. He hypothesized that Jupiter's Europa might have a water ocean underneath its surface. We talked about that in last week's episode. And he studied the seasonal variation in Mars's appearance. Over the course of a Martian year, it changes color a little bit, and that's because there are seasonal windstorms and sandstorms that will make Mars look different colors from our point of view. I said that he worked on a lot of NASA planetary spacecraft missions, and he published hundreds of scientific papers. The most cited of them is the 1972 paper from the journal Science called Earth and Mars, Evolution of Atmospheres and Surface Temperatures. And that paper from 1972 has been cited 516 times.
Whoa. I feel like I'm not familiar enough with papers to know how frequently they get cited.
Not often. My most cited paper has been cited, 5 times. 5, maybe 10. Yeah. I haven't looked because it just never happens. But I also am not an active researcher anymore. I'd say 500 is definitely at the end of the spectrum. Most papers can expect a dozen, maybe a couple dozen citations. If they're really impactful in their field, then they'll get a lot of citations. Yeah. But that's rare. But yeah, he was an accomplished scientist and also an accomplished science communicator. And he did both of those throughout his career. He was publishing pretty much up until his death. The last paper that he published with him as an author was published posthumously in 1997. But he was doing work through 1996 because he was young. He didn't die from old age. He died from pneumonia. So it was like a surprise. Yeah. And he didn't degrade in his ability to do work before he passed. Yeah. So I, as a science communicator, I was more excited to talk about his science communication work than about his research, although his research is very impressive. But he wrote hundreds of scientific papers. He wrote a bunch of articles for public consumption. He wrote books. He did TV appearances. Carl Sagan, before he died, especially from the 80s on, for the last 2 decades of his life, he was a household science name. He was a regular guest on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show.
That's so fun.
Sagan is basically, he was doing what I want to be doing in my life as a science communicator.
And I'll be the Johnny Carson, Moiya.
There you go. Corinne, let's start our own show.
I think that maybe we should, and I almost just said, let's just make our own streaming platform. The world could use one more.
There aren't enough. That's what I hear everyone say.
Everyone
you know what?
Says,
there just aren't enough streaming
app.
platforms.
If I had another $9.99 a month charge, that would be great.
That would be ideal. So I have here a list of some of his like most notable science communication projects. A lot of them happened in the 80s. So in 1980, he just got very busy. It's almost like he had that first stage as a hardcore researcher, and he never really gave that up. But in 1980, he like really burst onto the science communication scene. So one of the first things that he did in 1980, actually he was developing and producing it in 1978, is the TV show Cosmos. I'm sure you've heard of it. So in 1980, Carl Sagan co-wrote and solo narrated a 13-part documentary series for PBS. At the time, until 1990, it was the most watched series in the history of public television.
Whoa.
It's been seen by more than 500 million people in 60 countries around the world. It had an enormous reach, and it was reprised for another round in like 2014 with someone who was not as great.
I don't think I ever watched it on PBS. Like, I saw it later in life. Well, also, like, I didn't exist, so, yet, when it came out, but...
You're after this time.
I'm like, I really think that public television is just the best.
It really
I'm thinking back, did you watch Arthur as a kid?
I didn't have TV as a kid.
Oh, right. Okay, Moiya, we gotta watch Arthur one day. It's just the best
all
show.
All of it? We have to watch all of Arthur one day. So as someone who is developing my own TV show right now, I'm very fascinated by budgets for TV and film projects. The production budget for Cosmos in 1980 was $6.3 million. And then they got another $2 million for marketing.
That feels very big.
That feels very big.
For 1980
which is like,
especially.
Exactly, yeah. And that's probably part of why it was the most watched series on public television until 1990, when something about the Civil War knocked it out of the water. But it was known for its visual effects. And I think that's a large chunk of the budget. Yeah, because you would have these scenes where Carl Sagan was like walking through space. And that's very easy to do these days, but it was
not then.
Difficult 40 years ago. Yeah. So it had a big budget, and it was a big success. So good for them and good for PBS. The show covered topics in and around astronomy. I looked at the descriptions of the 13 episodes in the series, and I was actually pretty shocked by how much non-astronomy stuff there was. It made me feel like a type of kindred connection with Carl Sagan, because I often incorporate a lot of my folklore work and expertise into my astronomy communication. And Sagan, as an interdisciplinary scientist with a background in genetics and like evolution and chemistry, he brought that to his astronomy communication.
That's
and
great.
I just really appreciate that. So the topics of Cosmos were in order, like the structure of the universe. And then the second episode was evolution and genetics and the origin of life.
Okay. Sure, yeah, that makes sense. It's big UR space energy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
right. Like everything is space. So like he could talk about whatever he wants.
Of course, it all fits. That's the genius thesis, where it's like actually everything can work on my show.
There's a reason he's the inspiration for this podcast's name. The third episode was all about the celestial sphere and like the constellations and how the moon, Earth, sun system works. Then there was an episode on comets and asteroids, one on Mars, one on the outer solar system and the spacecraft that we send to study it, like Voyager, which he was involved with. There's an episode on light and space-time and faster-than-light travel, an episode on the life cycles of stars, one on the Big Bang and cosmology and like how the universe changes over time, and then, just throwing it in, an episode on the evolution of human intelligence. Then an episode on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the SETI research that he was very involved in. And then an episode on barriers to first contact, where he did talk about like the European colonizers coming in and making contact with Native Americans. So I can see the through line there too.
It was weighing on him all this time.
Must have been. You can see how so much of his interdisciplinary work was combined into Cosmos, and you can see like how he pulled it from other projects that he was working on.
Yeah. That makes me feel better about projects I have that are like kind of nothing's happening with, but I feel like they can be incorporated into like a future project, or like no work is wasted really. It's just towards this larger project. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he embodied that.
Yeah.
And we can too. We can continue his legacy in that way.
What if it turns out Pale Blue Pod is like episode for episode remake of this? Like, you just listed all the topics of his episodes, and it's like Pluto in Grandma's living room.
We're just reading the transcripts. That would be so unethical, but also 100%. Kind of hilarious. Also, we've now moved past 13 episodes.
That's so true. 22.
Mm-hmm. 22. This is our T Swift episode.
Yeah.
The show Cosmos won 2 Emmy Awards and a Peabody Award. It was quite successful. I'll talk about the Planetary Society next. So the Planetary Society is a nonprofit organization that is currently active. It's still around. The current CEO is Bill Nye, so like they're doing quite well.
Heard of it.
But it was founded by our good buddy Carl and 2 of his buddies, Bruce Murray and Louis Friedman, in 1980. He was very busy in 1980.
Yeah, that was a big year.
Mm-hmm. The Planetary Society's mission was to empower the world's citizens to advance space science and exploration. And they started it to show that there was public interest in space because federal organizations like NASA weren't getting the appropriate funding from the government, in part because the government was like, but people aren't interested in space, which makes no sense because they literally went to the moon 11 years earlier.
Yeah. I also think like that's one thing you can, it's just not an argument. It's like, yeah, everybody does care about space. Like that's just like we could all talk about space at a dinner party and like.
Exactly. But the government was like, nah, no one cares about that. So they weren't funding it. And then Carl and his buddies wanted to start this organization where public members, just like people, could join and show their support for space science. It was one of the fastest growing organizations or like membership organizations in the 1980s and now has more than 2 million members worldwide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Planetary Society is like the coolest name for a group to join. So they had the marketing right.
Yes. They especially advocated for SETI research. We did a whole episode on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, so go listen to that if you want to know more about SETI, or go join the Planetary Society as a member. So now that I'm talking about advocacy work, Carl Sagan was a good dude, it seemed, who advocated for some pretty cool things in a public way. So his work on Venus's atmosphere found that the greenhouse effect of having so much carbon in Venus's atmosphere produced those extremely high temperatures that could melt lead. So he was studying that on Venus, but then he turned his attention and thinking to Earth and the greenhouse effect here, back in the 70s and 80s. And so he became an advocate for policies to stop climate change decades ago. He even testified to Congress in 1985 to explain what the greenhouse effect was, how it affects other planets, and how it could, and well, is, and could affect Earth going forward. That video will be in the research notes, like the video of him testifying to Congress. So join our Patreon, and then you'll be able to see that video. You can see it if you don't join our Patreon. It's on YouTube. You just have to find it yourself.
You'll get quick access on the Patreon.
So he was a climate policy advocate, which is awesome. Love that for our boy Carl.
Kyle.
Not Kyle. I love that for our boy Carl.
We're really close with him, so we get to call him Kyle.
He also advocated for nuclear disarmament after the Cold War. And he hypothesized the drastic outcomes of a potential nuclear war. He was one of the authors of a report that coined the term nuclear winter. And he wrote 2 books about it. In 1984, which is just 2 years before the Chernobyl tragedy, he wrote a book called The Cold and the Dark: The World After Nuclear War. And then in 1990, he wrote another book A Path Where No Man Thought, Nuclear Winter, and the End of the Arms Race. And so he was a very public proponent of disarming nuclear weapons. He got a lot of flack from parts of the scientific community for this, actually.
Wow.
And in general, throughout his career, a lot of scientists didn't like that he was so public in his speculation about things.
Okay.
They thought that he was too willing to opine on subjects that science wasn't totally up to date on when he was doing his science communication. For example, this nuclear winter thing, there were scientists who, but also those scientists were like involved in nuclear research, so they were biased. But there were several scientists who claimed that he was talking about nuclear fallout without knowing what he was talking about. But he was literally advised. This is why I wanted to bring it up earlier. One of his research advisors was a scientist, a physicist who worked on nuclear reactions.
Yeah,
so this is not new to him.
He was working on nuclear stuff on the moon, so.
Yeah, not new to him. So those are some of the things that he publicly advocated for. Of course, he was also a public advocate for science literacy, which is a large part of why he did this science communication work. But he wrote a lot of books. He wrote so many books, 20, spanning lots of genres. So in nonfiction, his first nonfiction book was published in 1977, and it used his background in genetics and evolution to talk about the evolution of human intelligence, and it was called Dragons of Eden, which is a kick-ass name.
That is a good name.
Book. Yeah. So that's his first nonfiction book. It won him a lot of awards. And, the Howard Urey guy that you mentioned before as one of his like undergraduate advisors. Howard Urey was one of the people who wrote a letter to Harvard saying he shouldn't get tenure there because Urey did not like Sagan's communication work. He was one of the people. I know, right? He's one of the people who was like, no, Sagan spends too much time talking about science. He's getting famous by talking about other people's work. He does not deserve tenureship at Harvard.
That is so rude and stupid.
It is extremely rude. But after Sagan published Dragons of Eden, he got a note from Howard Urey saying something like, oh, I really enjoyed this book. I'm actually surprised that you know this much about this topic. You are a man of many talents.
Okay. Maybe that's an apology. Maybe. That is such a neg.
I know,
If someone said that to me, I would be pissed.
That would be because Sagan studied genetics and evolution and the origins of life in school, in undergrad. He just didn't then go to get his PhD in it. So this would be like if one of my undergrad mentors badmouthed me to any job that I applied to, and then 20 years later sent me a note congratulating me on the mythology book that I wrote.
That is so rude.
So rude. He didn't just do nonfiction, though. He also dabbled in science fiction. In 1985, he wrote Contact, which is a hard science fiction novel based around the idea of first contact with an alien species. It hit the bestseller charts. It did really well, especially as a fiction book written by a scientist, but he was super popular by then, so of course.
This is
and it was adapted.
Movie? It was adapted. Okay,
yes, then adapted into the movie with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey in 1997. And then he went back to nonfiction, and one of his last books that he published was in 1994. It was called Pale Blue Dot: A Vision of the Human Future in Space.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. Yes, that's where we get the name of this podcast. Well, actually, I feel like when we were thinking about that, because you came up with the name, Corinne, I imagine it was about the quote of how we're like that pale blue dot. He said that quote about a picture that Voyager took of the Earth from very far away.
Yeah, I feel like that quote is much more famous than this book. And we were doing a lot of brainstorming about names for this. And that one stuck.
It did. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh my God, yes.
I remember I emailed it to you like 2 minutes before we were about to hop on a call to like brainstorm our name. And I was like, there it is.
There it is. Yeah, listeners, this show was almost called We're So Tiny.
Which is true.
Yeah, but Pale Blue Pod is so much better.
Pale Blue Pod, a vision of the human tininess.
Thank you for picking up on the colon pattern. That's how so much of scientific publishing is named, and it gives me a little burst of joy every time I see that colon. Sagan won way too many awards for us to list here, but I will go over some of the highlights. And I'll say again that a lot of his colleagues, including some of his undergrad advisors like Howard Urey, were not pleased with his science communication work, but he was beloved by the public, and so he got a lot of awards. One of them was in 1977, the NASA Distinguished Public Service Medal for his work in communicating science to the public and getting the public excited about specifically space research. He also, for a very similar reason, in 1994, won the National Academy of Sciences Public Welfare Medal because he improved public welfare through his science communication work. He won a Pulitzer Prize. Pulitzer?
I never know what it is. I've said Pulitzer.
Pulitzer. Okay, he won a Pulitzer Prize
I feel like that's wrong.
for general nonfiction. He won two. One in general nonfiction for his book, The Dragons of Eden, that first book that he published, and then another for Cosmos, A Personal Voyage. You can win a Pulitzer for a show.
That's so fun. I think I've said this on the pod. When my book came out, I mailed it to win a Pulitzer. You like mail 5 copies to Columbia or something. And I was like, I gotta get in the running.
You gotta.
You can't win if you don't enter the race.
That's a very good point. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly. Carl Sagan said that.
Carl.
No, he didn't. Allegedly.
Allegedly. You will get that joke if you are very online. He won the Humanist of the Year Award.
Wow, that's a big one.
I know, right? From like the American Humanist Association.
That just feels like a lot of pressure.
It does. In 1981, after Cosmos came out, and he like rocked the science communication scene, he won 3 Hugo Awards. Hugo Awards are for like science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah.
He won 3 of them. One was for the Cosmos show.
Okay.
One was for the accompanying Cosmos book, and one was for Contact, which is the only actual science fiction that he did.
That's really funny.
There are so many others that he won throughout his life, and after he died, he was awarded several posthumous awards. But there are also awards named after him. So the American Astronomical Society gives out every single year the Carl Sagan Medal for Excellence in Public Communication in Planetary Science. It's a mouthful, and you know that if Carl Sagan were still alive, that's not what he would have called his medal. That is not an eloquent enough name for a Carl Sagan medal.
I think you're completely right.
But it exists, and it's awarded every year. One year, I'm going to win it.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. That's Carl Sagan. And I feel like the best way to close out this episode is for us to say some of his best quotes, or at least some of his quotes that resonated the most with us.
Yeah, I love that.
So would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay. The universe seems neither benign nor hostile, merely indifferent.
Oh, I like that.
And I love that. I love not assigning, like my husband and I talk a lot about people who are like, I feel so blessed that I have, and it's often like very rich people who say this, and like no offense in any way to a spiritual person, but I'm like, I think a lot of it is, we're not counting on all the luck that has contributed to this. So I love an indifferent baseline of like, it's not working for you or against you. It is just here.
It just is. That's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. This is my longest one. At the heart of science is an essential balance between 2 seemingly contradictory attitudes, an openness to new ideas, no matter how bizarre or counterintuitive they may be, and the most ruthless, skeptical scrutiny of all ideas, old and new. This is how deep truths are winnowed from deep nonsense. So this goes back to that quote that you pulled about what he got from his parents, that he got skepticism from one and awe or wonder from the other, because that that really is what you need
Yeah.
to do science. And it is hard to keep both of them in your mind at once, to be so open to all of the mystery, but so rigorous in making sure that everything you say and find is the truth.
Yes.
It's a hard balance to strike.
I think that's a trap a lot of people can fall in, of like, you can get skeptical about something, but then in doing your own like quote unquote research or like wonder about it, it's not quite, you're not skeptical enough about that either. And he really nailed the balance.
Oh, yes, he did. He nailed the balance, and he nailed the talking about the balance.
Yes.
This is something, I had not seen this quote before, and this is something that I've been thinking, or like trying to articulate for a long time, but hadn't. And of course
he already did. Okay, a quote I love is, "The boundary between space and the Earth is purely arbitrary, and I'll probably always be interested in this planet. It's my favorite."
What an appropriate quote for this podcast.
Big UR space energy.
B-Y-U-A-S-E.
Big yas energy.
Y-B-S-E. Amazing. My second is, it is the responsibility of scientists never to suppress knowledge, no matter how awkward that knowledge is, no matter how it may bother those in power. We are not smart enough to decide which pieces of knowledge are permissible and which are not, which is why
Love that.
it makes sense to me that he would leak all those government secrets.
Yes. He was like, no way.
Yeah, he was like,
I have to tell
I'm
the
not
people.
Yes, like the U.S. government is not smart enough to decide what information is and is not useful for the public.
Yeah, I love that.
What a rebel.
Tell me more about the nuclear war on the moon.
Right? Please, actually, please, do tell me about the nuclear war on the moon.
Okay, my last quote is, again, big yes energy. "It's been said that astronomy is a humbling and, I might add, a character-building experience." It feels like we're so tiny. Of like, it's humbling and it's a good reminder of our place in the universe.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. My last quote also, I think, has big "we're so tiny" energy. "For small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love."
Aww.
And this is from the book Contact, and it's probably a scene where the main character is talking to another character who's a religious figure. I'm not sure, I've never read the book, so I'm not sure how it compares to the movie. But in the movie, Jodie Foster plays a scientist, and Matthew McConaughey plays like a pastor or whatever. And so they butt heads over the science versus religion thing. So I know that it's from that book and probably has that context to it. But for me, when I read this quote, I think about the reason that we started this podcast in the first place, and how a lot of people get overwhelmed and intimidated by the vastness of the universe. I have never felt that intimidation when I think about how tiny we are. And I know with numbers and science how tiny we are. And I think the reason that I have never reached that point of overwhelm is because I love the universe.
Yeah.
And because I love how much there is to it. And I love that there are so many opportunities for other beings that aren't us to like get stuff right. Like there's just so much optimism for me when I think about how vast the universe is, and that fills me with love for everything.
Oh, I love that. I feel like there's a lot of wonder there too. Like, I think wonder includes love.
So sweet. Yeah, that's Carl Sagan. I am so happy that he lived, that he did his work, and that we were able to pay respect to him in this episode, finally.
I'm so glad we did this up. Well, with that, listeners, I hope you take skepticism and wonder into the rest of your day, and remember that you are space.
Yeah, you are. Pale Blue Pod was created by Moiya McTier and Corinne Caputo with help from the Multitude Productions team. Our theme music is by Evan Johnston, and our cover art is by Shay McMullen. Our audio editing is handled by the incomparable Misha Stanton.
Stay in touch with us and the universe by following @PaleBluePod on Twitter and Instagram, or check out our website, palebluepod.com. We're a member of Multitude, an independent podcast collective and production studio. If you like Pale Blue Pod, you will love the other shows that live on our website at multitude.productions.
If you want to support Pale Blue Pod financially, join our community over at patreon.com/palebluepod. For just about $1 per episode, you get a shout out on one of our shows and access to director's commentary for each episode. The very best way, though, to help Pale Blue Pod grow is to share it with your friends. So send this episode, this link, to one person who you think will like it, and we will appreciate you for forever.
Thanks for listening to Pale Blue Pod. You'll hear us again next week.
Bye.